Well, hello everyone, it's Coach Rachel. It's been a hot minute since I've reviewed any shoes. I'm sorry about that, but the latest edition of the Vaporfly 4, I think there's a lot of concern maybe and people wanting to spend their money, especially with money being a little bit tight right now. So I figured this is a good time to get back into it. So obviously you see the three different shoes here. They're all made by Nike. Kind of the outgoing models, the Vaporfly 3, and we're going to really try to compare the two. This is the new Vaporfly 4, and then this shoe's also been out for a while. This is the other top plated racer, if you will, from Nike. It's the Alphafly 3, and we will compare all three of them, and then maybe what you would use this Vaporfly 4 for, and what you would use the Alphafly 3 for. And these are just based on my opinion. Everybody's obviously has different strides, different paces, different body size, gait mechanics, everything. So don't take just my review. You know, obviously there's other folks that do this on YouTube. Kind of get a consensus, if you will, just like any other study. It's not a study of one, it's a study of multiple, and see what the trend is. So this is just my take for everybody. So I have worn out these Vaporfly 3s, and I'm going to start off each shoe I talk about with the specs, just as a refresher. So this is about a 6.5 ounce shoe, typically, and that's considered in men's size 9. Obviously, if you have a smaller foot, some of the weight will come down. So for me, it's probably closer to 6 ounces, maybe like 6.1, because I wear a men's 7.5 or men's 7. Women's 8.5. And I've put a lot of miles on these. I've worn them out. They're retired now, just recently. Right off the bat, they're not the most durable shoe, but they had their place. They did turn over. They were light, but they did not offer the comfort that I would have wanted anything past a half marathon. And frankly, after about 120 miles, I didn't favor these for any type of racing, particularly a half marathon distance, so I would use them for workouts. I've actually owned the shoe for about 2 years, as I do not dabble in plated running all the time. I do prefer to do a lot of my runs in trainers and earn it, and keep these things special and fresh on race day, and to ward off any potential issues with plantar and calf injuries. Some people will report that with plated shoes. Just keep that in mind. And they're expensive. God! Anyway, the next one on the list here is the Vaporfly 4. Back to this real quick. The heel is 40 millimeters. The forefoot is 32 millimeters. That gives you an 8 millimeter drop. Moving back to the Vaporfly 4. Obviously, it's been newly released as of March, at least in the United States it's been. And it is an even lighter shoe, just 5.9 ounces for the respective comparison of 6.5 ounces, men's size 9. So very light. When I put them on my feet yesterday, I couldn't, they were just like a little bit of a cushion, but no weight to them. Heel, we are actually losing 5 millimeters of stack height in the heel and losing 3 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. So that means this is 35 millimeters and this is 29 millimeters and only a 6 millimeter degree of drop. Do note that, because that will give you some gait characteristics difference. This will load the calf and Achilles just slightly more than the respective 8 millimeter drop shoes from Nike. We'll touch on that at the end. Some considerations and what that feels like between the two shoes. For a lot of people, it probably won't be too big of a deal. And then lastly over here is a shoe that I have put 2 races now in, maybe 2.5. And a few training runs in, but I try to keep the mileage really light on these because these are my babies. These are the Alphafly 3s. Again, back to the stack height more compared to the Vaporfly 3. It's 40 millimeters, 32 millimeters, so you have an 8 degree drop. These are a little bit heavier, about 7.5 ounces, 7.7 ounces, somewhere in there, for the men's size 9. So obviously for me, they're just a little bit lighter. Yes, they weigh more, but they are still stupid light. And you kind of want that for the longer distances. You need something to protect your feet when you're running a marathon, or if you're a 2 hour half marathon or something like that. So just to touch on what race these are good for, it's going to be relative to your comfort level. If you're watching this and you're a very elite 10K runner, that might be the same time as somebody who recreationally runs a 5K distance. So just keep in mind 30 minutes is 2 hours is different than 4 hours. So but time is time. And so you have to make those considerations too. What pace bracket would you be for your respective distances? So the differences between these two shoes. I do appreciate the 6mm drop. I feel like it's a good, stable, use of the whole plate, and it lets me toe off. But one thing that you will notice is there is not a whole lot of an aggressive rocker. You will get that more with the Saucony lineup. They have a very aggressive toe off, so meaning the toe is pointed way up and you have to really pop off. Why do I like a shallower angle here? Is because I have a bunion on my left foot, and that it makes it a little bit harder. The steeper the angle is, the more angle you are bending your big toe. And like I said, that's great if you can really just power through that and press off. And obviously I am when I'm running as fast as possible, doing intervals and such. But I like to control that and do that a bit. So, and this is still plenty of rocker, but I just like to be able to mid-foot strike, have a good stable base, and then toe off. These also did that. They're maybe not quite as, well, this one's slightly more steep of an angle, but it gave this similar kind of toe off between the two. People were saying in some other reviews, I tried to keep it cursory because I wanted to put the shoe on and experience it for myself, is that this is not the most stable shoe. And to some degree, I can see where that thought came about. If you heel strike, you're not going to have a good time with these shoes. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with heel striking, it's your foot relative to your center of mass. So if you're overstriding and heel striking, then you have a situation. But if your feet land where they need to be and you heel strike, then you may not have an issue. But you could potentially not enjoy these shoes, where this shoe is going to be a little more favorable to the heel strike. But regardless, all three of these shoes, mid-foot to forefoot striking, if you're that type of runner, you're going to have a good time there. Back to these two specifically, I think this shoe is much improved than this one. This just became kind of lifeless on my foot, frankly. Even when I first put them on, I didn't get that wow feeling that I had from previous shoes. Not to say that they didn't get down and do their job, they did, but they were light, but they weren't doing anything for me, and then they wore out incredibly quick. As far as the foam goes, and the rubber forefoot, for 200 and some miles, the rubber's in good shape. But I expect, even if they're just used as a trainer, I still like 300 miles to come out of my plated shoes. On that note, yeah, these will wear out much faster than these. My non-expert opinion, you will probably only get about 75% of the mileage that you will get out of these. The fewer miles that you can put on your primary race shoes, obviously the better, so do consider that while you're training in them. You want to make sure you're comfortable, but you do not want to overrun in them, because they need to have that pop, that freshness. They need to be able to turn over on that special day. You pay a lot to go and get to the race, motels, airlines, etc. Keep your shoes as fresh as possible. It's one of the few things you can control when you go race. Now, what else do I like about this shoe? I like the upper. It's very breathable. You can probably even see my hand to some degree as I wiggle my fingers in there. The laces stretch a little bit, so once you get them snug down, it'll take a time or two to get the laces set the way you like. They hold very well. That stretch actually kind of molds to the top of your foot, so you get a nice lockdown without hurting the top of your feet. You have to protect those little tendons because those don't heal so fast if you hurt them. The tongue is completely separated, not gusseted, from the rest of the shoe, but it's nice and wide at the top here, so it sits on top of the foot. But with this little split here, it did a great job of the tongue not sliding one side to the other, and it stayed right where I put it through the whole workout. So for reference today, I put these through a 2 mile and then a 4 by half mile workout. So normally I like to just work out in trainers, but I had to try them and do a shoe review for everybody. So in a nutshell, yes, these are improvement. If you were hesitant because you did not like your experience in the Vaporfly 3s, I say give them a try, particularly if you're on the fence and kind of leaning towards it. I do endorse the shoe. I think Nike made some good improvements. They are stable. They are actually soft. Even though you're looking at fewer millimeters of foam, they still, I felt like, protected my feet. What would I use them for? Nothing past the half marathon. In fact, in just under 2 weeks, I have a half marathon, and I probably will stick to these. But I do have a 10K coming up in like 5 days, so I totally will use these. And that will give me some more information and maybe an update video for you guys. But yeah, good 5K, 10K racer for sure. And then your more nimble feeling shoe. These would also work. And not to say no to a marathoner. If you like a more minimalistic, slightly more ground contact feel, then by all means this might suit you for a marathon. You will feel the ground a little bit more in these. However, the cushioning was more than I expected when I was doing my workout. I was expecting almost like a little bit of soreness in the front of my feet, but they did a very good job, whatever they did here in the foam, to make a lot out of a little bit. Hence, they cut down the weight by another ½ ounce. And you will notice that when you run in them. Now, quickly over here, back to these Alphafly 3s. Like I said, they're also an 8mm drop with the same heel and 4-foot millimeters. But for these, I think definitely would recommend these more towards the half and full marathon. The pod business here, yes, it's nice, it's soft. The only thing I can say about the pod is it probably enhances that cushioned feel, particularly in the second half of a race, and that's where this comes in to protect your feet. I think 8mm drop is a good balance. If you do chronically have calf issues or Achilles injuries, these are, just remember, 6mm drop. The lower your heel comes to the ground, pretending this is the back where your Achilles is, the more pressure there is and more force that Achilles needs to make for you to be able to spring forward. So the higher up your heel is, the less engagement there. So any like I said, Achilles injuries, calf, particularly peroneals, things like that, be careful. But if you're very, very prone to knee injury and quad, and you just want a little bit of the pressure taken off of your front and more towards the posterior chain for the work, then consider the 6mm drop. I like both. They both work for me, so I'm fortunate there, even though I've had surgery on my Achilles, or the Hoglands deformity, about 4.5 years ago. So just keep that in mind. So half marathon, for sure. Possibly for a few of you watching, marathon. Maybe for a few more, half marathon, 5K, 10K, and yes, much improved over the Vaporfly 3s. I wouldn't, if optimal performance is what you're looking for, I would not race these past 100 miles and probably won't race these past 75 miles. This is meaning A races, so if you retire one to a B race, then whatever's comfortable. But do note, I noticed with these, and I don't think it'd be much different than these. When these are done, these are done. I did a half marathon as like a hard training effort, what it was supposed to be. And I put them on, and I had already done a 10K in them a couple weeks prior, and I was fine. But just a little bit of a slowdown in my 10K to half marathon pace, I noticed in the first few miles even, and I said, boy, I'm really feeling the ground in these. And it actually kind of made for a not so happy day. So in a nutshell, I wanted to come on and just try to give a little bit of a perspective of what I thought of these 3 shoes. If you like the Vaporfly 3, stock up on them, because some of them are on sale. If you were indifferent to these are the Vaporfly 4s. I still think are worth investing in, because there's some carryover. They didn't completely reinvent the wheel, but they did make some good improvements. And then, of course, the good old standby. I think these turn over just fine. Some people complain about them being sluggish. Absolutely, I would rip a 5K in them as well. These shoes can well outrun what I can do, so just keep that in mind. Particularly with all the other companies out there. I'm not endorsed by any single one of them, so I'm just saying what I want. They're all fast. Just try some on, get a good return policy if you're brick and mortar or through running warehouse. Just try some shoes out and see what you think. I appreciate everyone that stayed towards the end. Hit me up in the comments with anything else that I might have noticed with these runs that would help you, what you think of the shoes, and please let me know any other shoes that you would like me to review. And of course, also I do training topics and things like that. So anything that will help you in structuring a training plan or just some ideas, also put those down in the comments, and we'll keep this rolling. Until next time, guys, take care.